6:32 PM, and we will start with asking if there are any amendments to the agenda. I have one amendment, and that is that we're going to appoint a new board member from the town of Reading. And I think we'll do that right now. We don't really have to take a vote because the select board has approved you. And so we're going to just say we are very glad to have you join us. And tonight's gonna be a fairly long meeting, so be aware.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored. Thank you.
And Anna, would you like to introduce her?
Yeah,
Formally?
so Gina McAllister is sitting to my left. She is joining us. She's a 12-year resident of Reading. And my understanding is that as a new retiree, she was looking to use her extra time for the good of the state of Vermont and specifically the students of Reading, but the students of the district as she and I have met twice now. Talking about the district structure and what's going on at the state level. And so she's very eager to be here and we're excited. I'm excited to have her for Reading and look forward to having a second voice for our small towns.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say anything?
Just that I can't imagine a more exciting time to be part of this board. I haven't been able to keep up with the news. I don't know how you do it, but I am so impressed with you all. And so honored to be a part of this board. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome.
All right, at this time, there's an opportunity for public comment. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand, identify yourself and your town, and I will call on folks as I see the hands go either here or there. Yes.
Hi, I'm Alicia Figetto from Reading. I'm just speaking on behalf of some of the Reading families that have gotten together. Something really quick to say. Speaking on behalf of the Reading community, we hope to join the school board in a committed partnership to create a stable and sustainable future for Reading Elementary School. We've heard that there's some difficulties going on right now, and we want to just make sure that our voices are heard. We'd like to collaborate by identifying and tracking key metrics such as consistent after-school programming and equitable access for Reading children. We can address long-standing gaps together and how they have impacted enrollment and community trust. Together, we have the opportunity to build a thriving, inclusive school that meets the needs of our students and families for years to come. The families that are posted right now online and the families with us currently are very eager to work with the school in reference to the work groups that are being created. So please keep us in mind and reach out to us so we're able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, we do expect to have a work group starting up this summer. And we'll put out to all the communities on the listservs and the front porch forums when that meeting will be. It will be a mix of board members and the public. So it's a kind of an open meeting. And we have not worked out yet a timeline, but I think we have to wait for school to get over and everybody to refresh themselves a little bit before we put that forward. So, but you should expect that probably with a date in late June or early July. Anybody else for public comment? Okay. All right, we have appointed our new board member already, so we start with the reports, starting with the superintendent's report.
I'm going to keep mine really brief. You'll see tonight a collection of progress that the leadership team and teachers have made on the identified strategic plan goals. We have a number of different presentations, so I won't go into detail there. As you know, much of my work this month has been really monitoring what's happening in Montpelier and hopefully keeping people well informed of what actions are going on and how that impacts us in our small district. And just finally, making sure that we take an opportunity. This is our last board meeting for the 24-25 school year, making sure you think back about some of the things and the work we're proud of and what are some of our next steps. But I think it's important that noting it's our last board meeting. It's been quite a year. And I hope that people will take some time to really reflect on the work of the board in the district.
Thank you, Sherry. We have Lila and Joaquin. I know you didn't have a written report, but if you'd like to say something, you can start.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I will also try to keep this brief. I just made a doc and notes and stuff. I was a little late because lacrosse has been pretty busy. But yeah, this past month, we've had world language students recognized in the annual Language Honor Society induction celebrating excellence in Spanish and French. 15 students joined the French Honor Society and 17 were inducted into the Sociedad Honoraria Hispanica for their dedication both in and out of the classroom. AP exams wrapped up in mid-May and students celebrated with a lively junior and senior prom, which is great. It was hosted by the class of 2026 this year. And students have been excited about seeing new electric buses finally in service, which has been really nice to see the district pushing for more environmentally friendly methods of transportation. People are also worried about in the winter how the buses are going to perform. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Teams are thriving. Baseball is, I believe they are now, since writing this, 10-4. They were 9-3. And senior nights across lacrosse and track honor graduating athletes as all teams head toward playoff season and aim for the championship win.
And I noticed that 12 students received the seals of biliteracy as well from Woodstock.
Yep, that's been another highlight from the
Yes.
language department. Yeah.
Glad to know that. Lila,
Sorry, right now, the Social Action Club is in the nascent stages of the project to collect and buy books, highlighting various perspectives to contribute to local libraries. We also had a successful concurrent bake sale and food drive 2 weeks ago, raising around $200, as well as collecting multiple boxes of donations. All proceeds will be delivered to the Upper Valley Haven in the coming weeks. We hope to continue to foster relationships with organizations working for the causes we believe in and care deeply for. And thank you so much to everyone who contributed. Also, a few weeks ago, I went to the Vermont State House with the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network to testify to the House and Senate Committees on Education in opposition to Governor Phil Scott's school district consolidation plan, or school and district consolidation plan. As of right now, he and a largely Democratic legislature are at odds and unyielding, with the Vermont Senate passing a version of H 454 that the governor refuses to approve. I'm so grateful for everyone who's continued to support the legislature in their opposition and participate in the process by reaching out to their representatives and sharing their voice. And I encourage everyone to continue to do so.
thank you, Lila. That's great you went there. We should have a legislative report.
Yep, Charlie's here.
Charlie is here.
Yes.
I'm sure
Not
to,
yet.
I'm sure to see the back rows, but thank you so much for coming, Charlie.
So where do you want me?
You're
right next to
Yes.
Okay, great.
You look tired.
Oh,
Some late nights then?
yeah, hi, my name is Charlie Kimball. I'm the state representative representing Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth. Well, first, yes, it's been an exciting turn of events at the Vermont State House. Lila, you gave a great report. I don't know what I need to do beyond that. So at first, I just want to say the for sale sign on the front of the school building gave me pause when I came into the. But last week, we had 28 students from the AP government class. And I got to spend some time with them because of a fire drill in the State House, and it was great to spend some time with the students. Talked about a variety of issues, and they were really well informed. It was really impressive to be with them. It was great. We also passed a large housing bill last week, which was really pretty amazing. It was not always smooth in the negotiations of that. Both Senator Clarkson and I were on the conference committee. So that was great to get that passed, accessing something called tax increment financing. I won't go into it now because it's really complex. We could be here all night. But H 454 was the education bill, as Lila had mentioned. So where that is right now, first of all, your superintendent has a front seat at this, so keeping tabs on it and can talk to the specific issues perhaps better than I, but just to tell you where things are. This is a committee of conference. When both the House and the Senate don't agree, then they form a committee of conference, 3 from each house, and they try to come and negotiate a compromise. And that started out in good faith. I would say Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, it all fell apart. As in the afternoon, a new proposal was brought forth from the Senate colleagues, which went in a very different direction than they were moving. So recognizing at about 11 o'clock at night that there was no possibility of coming to a conclusion, wiser heads prevailed and said, let's not try to do this right now. So sent people away, the House is not adjourned and the Senate is not adjourned, they are in recess. And coming back on June 16th and 17th for an already scheduled veto session. So that maybe the conference committee can come back together and form some kind of compromise. There are no meetings scheduled yet of the members of the committee. I spoke to one of the members of the House committee this morning, and they don't have anything yet scheduled. The biggest differences of opinion are really on school financing. And the foundation formula that had been crafted by the House in conjunction with Tammy Colby, a scientist from the University of Vermont. And arguably one of the topmost experts in education finance in the country for foundation formulas. So that's the biggest point of contention. There are others about independent schools and how they receive money and the requirements of what percentage of their students could be publicly funded in order to qualify for those funds, the tuition rates set by them. And then just really about the money. So on the good part is that the state aid for school construction is still in the bill, and still agreed to by the House and the Senate, but without any money. So that's kind of a problem. So looking for money down the road, but it's definitely identified within that legislature that this is something the legislature has to do, is provide money for state aid for school construction. So that's really the update. We hope that we have some movement. And then what happens with the conference committee is they bring their reports back if they can agree. And bring it back to the House and the Senate, and it's an up or down vote. It can be debated, but it can't be amended. And so there's a few choices at this point. And that's to just come out with what you can agree on as the two bodies. Maybe that's just state aid for school construction. And then take up the rest in the next session. That would be unfortunate because we've spent 5 or 6 months really working hard to try to come up with a new vision, but it also may be in some ways the least harmful. And we're trying to make sure that we don't do any harm and actually make progress going forward. And so then there's the person who's not in the negotiations in the room is the governor. Again, Lila mentioned that. The governor has the power of veto, and if it's not something that he likes, then he will veto it. So it's definitely his administration is constantly consulted by both the House and the Senate. And the conferees actually met with him on Thursday night to say, how are we doing? And he said, things look good. And then they didn't. So that's where we are. So we're not in session, right? Wait a minute. We are in session. We're just not meeting. We have something called token sessions. So every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's a token session where we gavel in and gavel out and call that a day. We don't get paid for it, in case the taxpayers are wondering. And then it just moves the agenda and keeps the session open so we're not adjourned. There's a whole different set of rules happen if you're adjourned. Happy to take questions on where we are, but I hope that also mirrors what you know. Sherry, yeah.
Where are we with class size and restrictions on size of class?
So the class sizes are still in there. I think K through first is at 10 and second through fifth is at 12, I believe, and sixth through eighth is at 15. I might be getting this wrong, and 9 through 12, I think, is at 18. Those class sizes are still in there. There's disparity in how sparsity is counted. Sparsity was by the school district originally, and there's a weight given to school districts that have sparsity, and that was less than 55 people per square mile. And some towns realized that that really wasn't fair when one town dominated an entire district, so it brought up the whole district to not be sparse. So then there was a concept of saying, well, what about sparsity by zip code? Well, there's over 340 zip codes in Vermont, and there's only 250 towns. So that didn't really make sense, but that was what the Senate was talking about and the House was talking about. So now they're not really aligned on how to define sparsity, because that just gives extra money for those kids that are coming from those rural areas.
Yeah.
So that's still in play. The other thing is small schools. It's up to the State Board of Education to really define small schools by necessity. Those are geographically isolated. So that's not yet defined either. There was a concept at one point of 250 students or smaller, or 100 students or smaller. So that's still kind of in play. hate to put it that way, but.
And is there any verbiage, with regards to combined classrooms?
Yes, in the House version, and I'm not positive on this, in the House version, it was that the class sizes of, that you could combine up to 2 classes into 1 classroom, and then that class size would apply.
Received, so we could have a kindergarten, first grade combined meet 10, even if it's 5 in kindergarten, 5 in first?
I believe that's the case, but.
The current version,
The
right?
current version,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Any other questions for Charlie?
yeah.
Hi, Kylie. So the non-homestead taxes, is that still in this bill and can it be taken out of this bill and be a separate thing?
Yeah, thank you for that. So the people, the Senate and the House conferees do not agree on how to approach the classification system that the House came up with. And that is to be able to identify 4 different types of property to be taxed at different rates. The homestead, the non-homestead.
That was the House's idea.
That was the House's idea to come up with 4 different ones. The Senate pretty much rejected that. And they have a belief that, no matter how the house is used, it has certain value, should be taxed that way. So, now we're in the compromise mode, so there's one proposal to have a study. And ask the tax department to come back with how they could implement a tax system that would identify second homes apart from primary homes. And that's been, the interest of many people in the legislature for a long time, to be able to tax second homes differently than primary homes. There's always question as to how does short-term rentals fit into there too, and that's a different question as to how that property classification works. So at this point, it's kind of hanging in limbo at best. It's a study that the tax department comes back in December with. At worst, it's not in the bill at all.
Okay, and then thank you. The state aid for school construction, what does that mean?
So there's a large section that came out of a task force and a working group, all this language to come up with a few things. One is to have a state aid for school construction task force to figure out what sources of money may be available. Borrowing from the Rhode Island model, where a school district would still go out and borrow the money. It wouldn't be an obligation of the state, but the state would contribute money towards the debt service. So that was one concept. There's a second concept of how do you prioritize school projects, and creating a group within the Agency of Education to manage those projects across the state. So I tried to figure out if there was a way legislatively to say school construction projects that had already received approval could jump to the front of the line. But what I found in speaking with the Agency of Education is that even a school project that was approved wasn't approved for a green light to get state aid for education. It was mostly about, yes, these are reasonable numbers, and so the debt service would not count towards your excess spending threshold. However, when the legislature took away that exemption from the excess spending threshold, that approval really kind of went away. So that's kind of where that is. So there wasn't a way to prioritize already approved. The other part is just coming up with the prioritization of what school projects got green lighted first. Is also in that state aid for school construction piece. To determine, is it a matter of how many students are affected, what's the health and condition, what's the facilities condition index, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that groundwork has already been done. The idea of school consolidation has not fallen into that, so we're dealing with this very malleable area where if you're talking about any kind of school consolidation and what schools can accommodate other schools. Is it an existing facility? Is it a new facility? Is it that kind of thing? So that's, again, where the state aid for school construction language helps address that.
Thank you.
To ask the other end of the question, is there any verbiage on class size as far as maximum students in a classroom, or maximum staff to students, or maximum students to staff?
Yeah,
Anything on the other end of the spectrum of class size?
there's not.
Okay.
And there was a construct at one point in terms of identifying student to staff ratio that was really never fully embraced. And not only, and then student to teacher ratio, again, not embraced. It was mostly minimum class sizes. Yeah,
And thank you for all the work you've been doing. We
it's,
see you.
it's what we signed up for, yeah. Happy to help. Where I can. Question.
Is there any language about travel for children to get to these consolidated schools if that like? I'm
The-
thinking kindergarten is riding buses for long distances.
Yeah, that's a fair question. There's nothing in the language in either version of the House or the Senate about length of time on a bus. However, there's been considerable discussion about it. The idea is to keep the earliest grades as close to home as possible and still achieve efficiencies and positive outcomes. And that it's more applicable for junior high and high school to have a regional facility that offers more opportunities, and those students can generally, I wouldn't say endure a longer bus ride, but it wouldn't be as injurious to them. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Has there been any research or evidence that has been used comparing maybe what other states have done that hasn't worked? When it comes down to like max size of classrooms and teacher ratios and what works and what doesn't work? Cause there's a lot of states that have some of these
Yeah.
issues and conflicts with class sizes.
You're right, I have to say that there has been research, I'm not as familiar with it, I was really on the money piece more than on that piece of it. But in the process, the House Education, Senate Education, and sometimes I sit on the House Ways and Means Committee. We took testimony from experts from all over the country as to how they had applied a foundation formula, their approaches to their school system. And there's something called this excess spending, no, that's not it, supplemental district spending, as a way to say, if the district isn't given enough money, is there a way to go out to the community and ask for more money? So we dealt with that a lot, but in terms of other states' approaches to minimum class size or maximum class sizes, I don't know the data on that. I know it's had.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Yeah.
So are you hearing from any other towns or parents or students about like how you would implement these types of cost savings? Because even when if the Colby model is adopted, I think it's like 7 million that comes out of our budget, and to me, it seems like even if you closed the smaller schools, you know, not to offend anyone, but like I don't even think we could operate the high school, middle school, elementary school, you know, Killington and West for that amount of money. It almost implies that we don't have, that the high school is no longer, I mean, that the parents who called me who are seeing the headlines of the funding formula are just, they see it as existential, like, we're not gonna be Woodstock anymore. And so I'm just wondering if you're hearing that from some of your representatives.
Oh, yeah. And I'm hearing from a lot of community members. So the spreadsheet that got published about each school district often is an unfortunate exercise in some ways because it doesn't take into account what a new district may look like and the resources that would be available to that district and how that would work. So that's one piece of it. Second, there are some school districts that are really not providing enough resources to their students. And some of that is by choice from the voters because they don't really want to have a higher tax rate. And so they are limiting the amount of resources made available to those students. So a foundation formula should be able to overcome that as long as the legislature funds it. That's a caveat on that. So yes, there are school districts that stand to lose more money than does Mountain View, and they have made their voices very well known as well. And there are some schools that have considerably more resources. Whether it's a variety of language programs that we just don't have. Or other resources we just don't have. I always talk about Woodstock having a track team and no track. And some of those things, but it was great to see the 28 kids from the UP government. So there's still a rigorous academic program. You know, some of the things you already know, where there's high spending. We didn't fully implement, the special education census blocks. We still have mental health costs that are, on the obligation of the schools. And that's hasn't really, worked its way through. I know there are some unfunded mandates and trying to figure out, continue to identify how that is, filtered down into your school budget. Are there ways to get rid of some of those things? The School Boards Association gave me a 4-page document that's a spreadsheet. It's very detailed on the things that the state has said, you need to do this, but you don't have any money for it. So I'm very sensitive to anything like that, and I know the school. On any initiative, let's put it that way. Yeah. One last thing is the miscellaneous education bill, which is where, I can't remember the name of it, is it 479? Anyway, no, that's not, which includes the legislation for phone-free schools. Is also still live. So it's, probably going to be taken up in the veto session. So there's a lot of different things in that miscellaneous education bill that people are very interested in. So just to let you know.
Thank you, Charlie.
I just want to say that Jim Fenn has put together 3 models of what happens under these.
Different
Proposed,
proposals,
Yeah, and I'll be sending that out to the board. And it'll also end up in the communities, so we all
Can you please send
understand.
one to me?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah.
$14,000 per child looks like. So
Yeah,
and
unweighted?
no, he's got the weights. and
Okay,
everything
all right, okay.
In there, so, and, you know, we don't look too good on those weights anymore in our communities
Okay,
because of the sparsity.
Yeah.
For one thing.
yeah. Yeah. There's one more question.
Yeah, for, because our district is Act 46, and so I'm just wondering the minimum class sizes, does it have to do with the students that live within the towns? Or the ones that are specifically enrolled in each individual school? Because that really limits us, and it makes our smaller towns that are outside of our Woodstock hub. I think struggle because of all the extra resources that are pooled into the Woodstock school that aren't in our other schools. So does that question make sense of like?
Yeah.
Is it the students that live in the town that could be part of that town, or is it what's enrolled within that school?
Enrolled within the school. So there are some towns that have more than one elementary school. And certainly school districts that have more than one school, so it really applies to the school itself. And then, again, there's that small by necessity. Because of geographic isolation, so there are some schools that are not close to any other elementary school, and have to look at that and say, yeah, where are they gonna go? Canada? So that's some of the consideration that has to be taken in.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, thank you very much for your
Well,
opportunity.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think you all have my email at this point, because I've been receiving a lot of emails.
Sorry about that.
It's good. No, it's good.
I've been sending them out.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, take care.
All right, we have a board member resignation. Ernie Fernandez of Woodstock has some changes in his life and has decided that he cannot be helpful. And so he has resigned. I don't think he's online. And he's not here, but he's gonna get a nice gift here. On my foot. And we also have another resignation, that's not a board member, but it's a board person who we really couldn't do without, and that would be Raina Bishop. So she is going to get a beautiful piece of farmhouse party, thank you. So look over there. And we thank you, Raina, for always keeping us in line and for knowing the parliamentary procedures better than most of us and correcting us with no hesitation, which is good. We don't need any accusations of operating poorly or wrongly. And, you know, you're such an asset to our schools and to our central office. And, I know you're gonna do a bang up job with the HR position as well. You already are. So thank you so much for all the time you've put into it. And if you know anyone who wants to apply, she sent out some things. It's a by meeting, $100 by each meeting to take the minutes and publish them. So if you know anyone who's looking for a little part-time side hustle, as they say in Florida, let Raina know or send the information out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rita has agreed to be phone a friend. So she promised to have cell phone inside if we need a panic call, she can be available. Thank you, Raina.
Yes, thank you. We do have one resignation of an educator, and that is Lori Doherty. Okay,
Yes.
and which school is she in, Sherry?
She has been this year coordinating our MLL program, and so part-time position, working with those students who do not come to our schools with English as their primary language, and has been assessing and setting up systems, so she's been with us since this fall.
Okay, well, we thank her for her work. And we have 4 teachers to hire and approve the hiring of. I'm gonna do them as a group of 4, if that's all right. We have Emily Hudson, who's gonna be one of the C3 teachers, and Brian Duff as well, a C3 teacher. Angela Keller is going to be a world language department teacher at Woodstock Union High School Middle School, and Mark Erickson is going to be the new lab STEM teacher at Woodstock Union High School Middle School. Is there a motion to approve the hiring of these teachers?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Now we're gonna hear from Julie Brown, who is our literacy queen. And she's going to give us some stats here, and then Anna has something to say as well. Julie.
Do you want to just,
Well,
want us
just
to
pass.
pass those out, Julie?
Sure, I guess I wasn't,
Prepared to do anything formal, but just to
Give
celebrate.
an overview of what you're doing and.
Yes, sure, yes, I'm prepared to give an overview of the University of ESU, absolutely. So, thank you so much for the opportunity. Harry just invited me to say a few words on literacy at Mountain View, so I wrote some things down by 14, I didn't want to, I can say a lot about literacy, so I'm keeping it to just a few minutes. So I think it's important to note that, Mountain View Supervisory Union has an ongoing literacy initiative, and it's pretty important to know that it's within a broader context of declining achievement for Vermont's children. In 2024, in national testing, Vermont was one of only 8 states to see their reading scores significantly decline for 8th grade students. And even more concerning, Vermont was one of only 5 states to see their reading scores significantly decline for 4th grade students in the nation. In 2021, a group of teachers studied approaches to reading development and instruction alongside the amazing Jen Settle. At the time, 58% of our 3rd grade students were reading proficiently. These teacher leaders proposed we set an ambitious goal aligned with reading research and what case studies from different districts suggested was possible. What they proposed to the board and the superintendent was that 80% of our students would be proficient in reading through core instruction by 3rd grade, and that 90% would be proficient with supports at 3rd grade and remain so through the grades. They stated very succinctly that success in literacy is an issue of equity. And as you know, 3rd grade reading is highly correlated with future academic, social, health, emotional outcomes. This board approved that 90% proficiency goal for literacy. You have supported teachers and principals to learn new evidence-based practices for teaching reading and new curriculum. So within this context of declining literacy scores in Vermont in general, and from the 21-22 school year, when more than 4 in 10 of Mountain View's 3rd graders were below proficient on a measure of reading, I'm really happy to report that this spring, 82% of our 3rd grade students demonstrated reading proficiency. I guess a few more words. That's not just a data point. It reflects the hard work of our teachers, It predicts future academic success, and it promises to reshape our district. We will keep working to reach that 90% vision and build a school system where all children are strong leaders and writers. In fact, several classes and grade levels at MVSU are already approaching 90% proficiency in just 3 years into this initiative, and other grades are trending upwards. So in closing, I wanted to thank you, the board, and our community for your commitment to not just talking the talk of literacy as equity, but walking that walk with our teachers. Our preschool teachers are preparing our youngest students with the foundational language and literacy skills they need for future well-being and academic success. Our elementary teachers are working so hard to adopt new curriculum and teaching methods. Our middle and high school teachers recently shared their work with a national audience, and our principals and leaders are all rowing in the same direction. And really, truly, Mountain Views is becoming a lighthouse district for literacy in Vermont and beyond. And I just really thank you as the board and the community for your ongoing support. And the work continues. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Julie. And I think so this evening, we would like to recognize our own Julie Brown. We'll take ownership of you. For your nomination for the Community Impact Social Justice Awards. So as a member of the Black, Indigenous, People of Color Employee Resource Group at Dartmouth Health, we created the BIPOC ERG to honor we created the Community Impact Social Justice Awards to honor social justice leaders of the past by shining light on all leaders of social justice who continue these legacies today and into the future. Among the full area of the Dartmouth Health area, which includes Lebanon, Nashua, Manchester, and Concord, Julie was one of only 12 nominees. And her nomination spoke to her personal and professional commitment to address literacy as a civil right. And your efforts have included supporting fellow MVSU teachers in literacy instructional practices and speaking nationally on a topic of adolescent literacy, as you spoke to. Our district structured literacy program is thanks to Julie, and she has served in a variety of roles within our district, including structured literacy teacher, special educator, literacy facilitator, and EL coordinator for MVSU. So I heard you got called doctor. Have you received your doctorate already? All right, so you're not currently enrolled in a doctorate program, but have officially graduated. Congratulations, doctor. And she continues to find inspiration in her students. So please join me in congratulating and celebrating Miss Julie Brown, Dr. Julie Brown, for your nomination for your Community Impact Social Justice Award.
Thank you.
And they said it couldn't be.
All right, thank you very much. We are now going to hear from Barnard Academy and the Family and Educators Together team presentations. What's up?
Thank you. I'm just gonna pass this out so you have something to take with you and to follow along. We have a very short presentation just to introduce you to this work that we've started. So I'm gonna introduce two of the teachers at Barnard Academy. Erin Butcher is our 5th and 6th grade classroom teacher. And Julia Zalzak. She is our preschool teacher for the 3 and 4-year-old students at our school, and they've both been part of our Families and Educators Together team that we started this year. And I'm gonna have Erin just describe what the Family and Educators Together work is.
Yeah, FET, it stands for Families and Educators Together, and its primary goal is to foster authentic, trusting partnerships between schools and families. At our FET gatherings, family members discuss how to build a more inviting, equitable, stronger school community for everyone involved. With equity as a primary focus, we want to make the decision-making process accessible to all parties at our school. We want parents to be able to express concerns and provide a variety of perspectives that might not otherwise be represented. Specifically, any family that might have had barriers to being involved in this process in the past, and making them feel not only involved in the process, but as active participants in that process.
And Julia's gonna share a little bit of her experience with the first meeting that we had, which was very well attended. The parents that we invited, it was an incredible moment to be able to just say, we're asking you to come together so that we can listen to you. And I would say if there's one sort of overarching goal, is to really listen to the parents, that especially the parents that we don't hear from as often, is to just bring them together in a room and say, we're inviting you to share. So Julie's gonna.
Yeah, so we only have the one meeting so far, and I've already seen a few benefits. And, one of them is just getting the chance to get to know families better outside of a parent conference. And, be able to get some feedback from them. And at one point in our meeting, we got together in small groups, and my small group really focused a lot on, how to increase their sense of belonging in the community. And we talked about a lot of the blocks for that. And so I've already seen, one of the things that they came up with, the parents came up with, was to be able to share their contact information with each other so that they could do play dates, especially for the families that aren't, longtime Barnard residents. It sounded like that was one of the issues, was the people that aren't long time, Barnard residents are having a hard time integrating into the community. And so what was so cool is as a result of the meeting, anyone who gave permission was able to share their contact information, and I've already seen play dates happen because of that. So it was just heartwarming to see an immediate benefit from just our first meeting, so. Thank you.
Just to add a little bit to what Julia was saying, I think the dynamics of our community have changed a lot over the past 5 years. People have come in, people have left. And I think that there is sort of still that sense of isolation from some households that we really want to try to alleviate, and make everybody feel like they're an active part of the school and the community.
It was so impressive to see how intentional these parents were about their child's education and their child's upbringing. It was really neat to see.
Can you speak to the grant that you wrote to support the work?
Yes, so we did get funding from the Innovation Fund, and this work has a really strong hold with not just Barnard, but with our entire district, because it is connected to the strategic plan goal of fostering the vibrant homeschool and community partnerships. So it was one way that we thought that we could really strengthen these community partnerships, and the Innovation Fund was very supportive of it. And we're looking forward to next year of bringing it to probably 3 or 4 more of our schools next year. So it's been a really, really positive experience.
Does the board have any comments or questions? Go ahead.
As you
Anna.
started talking, it seems to align right with what's kind of rumbling in Reading is getting more community involvement, but specifically parents. Is there one point person that would be willing to converse with me and answer questions? I would love that.
Yeah, that's great to hear that there are more schools going to join this. I think it plays a great role, especially because there are a lot of people moving into our areas now.
And just to kind of as a aside, we learned about this at Teams while at a conference in Denver. Melissa made a personal contact with the individual who started the program. She's emailing back and forth. So it really was as a result of one of our national conferences that we learned about this, and we're able to now bring it to our small school district.
What have you been using the funds for?
So we received money for the dinner. We provided dinner, and we provided childcare. And so we paid someone to do the childcare, and we also provided a stipend to the teachers. They volunteered to do it without a stipend, but we were able to give them to, we've met and, you know, a number of times, and also they're having the meeting times in the evening, so, yeah.
Anybody else?
The two really important. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Next we have, Woodstock Community High School, middle school schedule and programming review. I don't know if you.
Jen's gonna speak.
Oh, so,
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Settle, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Aaron, who couldn't be here this evening. I hope I can do his presentation justice. He wanted to share the work he's been engaged in with New Solutions K-12, which is an organization we hired to help with the elementary schedule redesign. He hired them to help with the high school, middle school schedule redesign. The middle school, high school schedule is a bugaboo. We have a middle school and a high school together. We have shared faculty. We also have specific learning needs at the middle school level and the high school level. And so we've had multiple iterations of a high school schedule and middle school schedule over the years. And none of them seem to be perfect. And as a new leader, Aaron really wanted to engage with best practice and some experts in order to redesign the high school and middle school schedule. To be clear to the students in the room, this is not happening next year. This is something for the future, so don't panic right now. So what New Solutions K-12 did is essentially an audit. They took a look at our schedule and all of our guiding documents from the board level. And they also engaged the staff through one-on-one interviews and small group focus group interviews. Students had opportunities to engage in focus groups, and all of that information was brought together and presented to sort of a guiding coalition of faculty and administrators. Sherry and I are both a part of that. What resulted was a 50-page draft of their findings, and maybe you had the time to read through it all prior to this meeting, but it's linked in the board packet if you want to take a look at it. And so I'm going to highlight some of the pieces that came from that. First of all, they were impressed with, based on our size, the number of AP courses that we offer. And I'll just highlight that our school offers 17 AP courses, Lebanon offers 14, White River Valley offers 9, Windsor 0, Hanover 0. So that was an impressive piece from their research. And we offer nearly 3 times more electives than comparable institutions, including at the middle level. We have some of the smallest average class sizes in the region, and we provide a lot of study halls. There are both pros and cons to both of those data points that they provided to us. Currently, we've developed a creative schedule to meet the different needs of all the different parties that are in that building. And we're trying to make the most of it. We have a pretty complex schedule. I don't know if you're aware, we have 8 classes that are offered, but 6 meet in a day and 2 are dropped. And there's like this break in the middle of the day to make sure we have Hartford students involved in the schedule. And it's quite complex and hard to follow. It does have 5 minutes of passing time in between each classes, and there are some suggestions about potentially reducing that in order to recoup minutes of instruction. Our schedule currently maintains the least amount of academic seat time compared to other peer institutions. They provided detailed proficiency data, and if you check out page 14 of the full report, you can see that as of 23-24, we're still not hitting proficiency goals in literacy and math. We could potentially repurpose our time to increase our academic minutes, and we could reduce the number of study halls. A large cross-section of our teaching community is on the coalition team, and Aaron would like to emphasize that creating a new schedule is a team sport. He wants as many voices involved as possible in the creation of this new schedule for the future. The team is charged with reviewing this research and prioritizing recommendations to make future recommendations to the administration regarding schedules in the 2026 and 2027 school year. So that's just a quick synopsis of the report. Sherry, did you want to add anything from your experience?
I chuckle at the sport because there are lots of opinions, lots of ideas. as someone who's been here for more than 30 years, I think I've lived every version of potential schedules. And so I really appreciate, and what I think was actually also in our report and commended for, how involved, how engaged, how passionate our teachers are about the schedule, because it is incredibly challenging what we're doing now, and every conversation really is about what's best for students and how do we maximize those opportunities. But I think what Nate Levison's team is really, every minute has to be treated as, you know, the most important. We cannot waste a single minute when we have students in that building. And so really thinking about how we maximize learning, using every minute they're with us as a way that ensuring that they're learning and they're engaged and they're, you know, being inspired in different ways. But it was a very positive report about what's being offered, and great to have, you know, and New Solutions K-12 is a national organization, consulting group, so very positive.
I did have a chance to read through the 58 pages. All I do is sit with my foot up most of my day, but having worked in the shared staff position that I was in for a long time over there, I think one of the hardest things has always been the shared staff issue. And it's very, very difficult to try to get dedicated, for example, art teachers only who do middle school. And so because there's not enough sections to justify the job. And it's always been the biggest issue. And they didn't really have an awful lot of suggestions around that problem, which is a real one. So I'll be interested to see and follow that. Thank you.
So I'll say from a student perspective, going from one end of the building to the other, just to get to another class, needs to happen in 5 minutes, especially if you need to stop at the bathroom or something. So I think reducing pass time would definitely not be helpful.
Could you do it in 4?
Or if you want that 7 extra minutes, 6 extra minutes a day.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was kind of a stark contrast that we have these great elements of like APs offered and electives. But then we were the worst or the least academic time. So it makes, and I tried to get into the report and I couldn't get access until Aaron granted it this afternoon. It begs the question, how do you measure academic time? Because if you're in band, if you're in personal finance, I mean, of course, we offer, is that not considered academic? I mean, for 17, 18-year-old kids, I think it is. I mean, it's one thing in 3rd, 4th grade that they just be in literacy and math. And I know when Nate Levinson did this report for the elementary schools, it was all about measuring minutes of literacy and math. But in high school, I think you should be getting, you know, credit for minutes and electives. So how do you define academic time?
It was just total number of minutes of butts in seat during class time, so no, it wasn't subject based at all.
Oh, it's not, so just pure
Right.
academic time?
Yeah.
So how is it that we're least academic time? Do we not start school early enough? Do we get out too early? Do we have too long of a lunch? Like, what was the culprit?
That's what we have to figure out. That's part of what this is digging into. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't define that. They just add the minutes.
Well, I think part of it is that we're trying to do 8 classes. And so by having it's a finite amount of time. And so if it's 6 per day, one's dropped off, that means that, you know, the classes, you're not getting 8 a day, you're getting 6 a day. So when you total it out, we were significantly less and one of the pieces that
Right, and it's just like, it's about refining all those extra minutes. So 7 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but added up over the course of a year, that is a lot of minutes. So it's making micro changes on the daily schedule, maybe thinking about how to reconfigure lunch. We have like multiple lunch rounds that go through, and that sort of gets up time. And then the minutes in between classes, and just really refining over the course of a year is really the minutes we're trying to like recoup. There's a large number, and they provided that within the report. That we can recoup over time.
Lila?
If I could just, say something in favor of our time, I can absolutely see reducing study halls. But our time, I'm involved in like 6 clubs and organizations, and I just know that is going to, I absolutely see the value of instructional time. But I know that, you know, being the co-president of Social Action Club, being secretary of QSA, that is gonna be valuable for my college application in a way that 25 minutes a day is not going to be.
And the report does not suggest club time is not valuable or non-academic time, but sometimes our time isn't used well by everybody, right? So figuring how we can reconfigure our time potentially could be a solution to the instructional minute issue.
You should read it. There's a lot in there.
But does the reduction of study halls contribute to like now she's not gonna participate in these clubs because she doesn't have this study hall to perform her work? So she needs to do it for after school. And or the reduction in sports activities, because if there's less study hall, they're, they don't have it, they're not getting home until 9 o'clock at night if they have an away game. Versus.
All factors to consider.
So I just want to make the point that right now the public is not allowed to ask questions, and so you can ask it at the next
Sure.
public comment, just because people are new to board meetings. That's how we run a public meeting, as just as the select board and other groups do. Thank you. Anyone else on the board have a question or a comment? All right, we'll move on to the MVSU Quaglia Culture Survey presentation.
Right, so every year we know we do the culture survey. We take a time at the end of the year to look at that data. Sorry, I did share, I did a slideshow. Thank you. So we try to take a little bit of time to look at what happened in that survey by individual buildings. And so just to kind of review our first strategic plan really put a value on creating a culture survey. So we identified Quaglia as the method that we use to collect data, and it was really to identify and address that goal. The reason we picked Quaglia is that it had a lot of the conditions that we look at in terms of how do we respond to student behavior. It really was in line in terms of our instructional practice as well as addressing social emotional supports. The other piece that was really helpful with Quaglia is that parents, teachers, and students are really asked within the same body of themes. So it gives us an opportunity to compare data over periods of time. And so each of our administrators have identified what their highlights, their concerns, and their action steps. So each principal is going to talk about their page, and we have Melissa with us.
All right. So there were so many highlights, but we were asked to only pick one per school. So mine is for Barnard Academy, that's 34% increase of students reporting that they like going to school. So over the time that we've done this survey, it's increased by 34%. An area of concern that has continued from last year is and actually decreased for students reporting that they see themselves as a leader. That's gone down 23%. And that's something that our entire faculty took on as a goal this year. And we really thought deeply about it in our staff meetings and done additional surveys in each teacher's classroom, because we want to increase leadership opportunities for our students and create clarity for students around what does it mean to be a leader. So it's been really interesting work, and I think important for our students as they grow and learn. Thank you.
Hillington Elementary, Mary?
Yeah. So one highlight was that 100% of our parents who were surveyed are proud of their school, which made all the faculty and myself really, really happy about that. However, one topic of concern, and it's hasn't this topic has been around for a while. It just had a bit of a sharp increase this year, and that is that 27% of our students in grades 3 through 5 indicate that school is boring. It increased almost 9% from 2024. So this also came through in our PBIS survey that we send out in the fall. So one thing that we've been working on, because this, like I said, it's not entirely new information to us, is increasing meaningful and productive student learning experiences in grades K through 6, so we can foster that early. But we've also been working with the Dartmouth Senior Design Team this year in particularly looking at boys who indicate that school is boring or they don't feel challenged. So we've been fortunate to have those seniors from Dartmouth in our building a bit this year, doing some protocols, working with teachers, interviewing teachers. And actually tomorrow we're going to Dartmouth to learn about their final protocol. So, or their final presentation and what they've unearthed and learn about their recommendations for us. But our fifth grade teacher's been working really closely with them and has been implementing a few things in the classroom that she's been seeing some nice results with engagement with students. So yeah, that's definitely on our top of our list.
Thank you, Mary. Brandon.
Yeah, good evening. Like Melissa said, it was hard to choose just one. And we had great data from Reading as far as I looked at parents and, proud of their school. They feel welcome in the school. I chose one that showed a little bit of an increase that was important because daily I get to see the relationships that are made between teachers and students. And I thought it was just nice for this to see an increase to go back up of that teachers or parents are saying that teachers know what the child likes to do outside of school. So it just kind of shows this like strengthening between the school home partnership. A couple areas of concern, just staff working in a collaborative manner and also having a voice in decision making. So an action step would be to create more pathways for staff to feel like their voice is heard if they're not feeling like the current avenues are effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Devin?
Hey everybody, I'm gonna spare you the video during bath time, so I'm solo tonight. At Prosper Valley, have a lot of cool things to report. Looks like I did break the rules and choose 2 highlights. My apologies. One of my great highlights was that the staff reported that bullying in our school was down 22.5%. That was exciting, obviously at the general level, but especially for some of the work that we've put in this year and some of the work that the staff has done in terms of our code of conduct in response to behavior. So that's been really exciting. On the student side of things, students report that respect among one another is, well, they didn't report that it was up, but they say that students respect each other, and that was up 34.5%. Again, second largest year of Prosper Valley ever, next year being the largest. It's exciting that even with a growing student body, we're able to keep kids for the most part respecting each other, and they're feeling that as well. This one for me was really hard. Staff are staff and students are the reason I'm there, and staff this year reported that effective communication in the building that was down 27.4%. So first year in the gig, I'm hoping that next year can provide some great opportunities for us as a staff. And then along those same lines for an action step, I just want to continue to build opportunities for teacher voice. There's been a lot of great work at Prosper Valley this year. Speaking for myself, who's been on the staff for a long time in a variety of roles, I think there are some big wins in this category. And as always, it's exciting that Sherry's as a part of the conversation at the state level, boots on the ground, and our teachers are boots on the ground to the students. So making sure that we can have teacher voice in the day-to-day decision making that can possibly affect student achievement. So thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you, Devin. Maggie?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Woodstock Elementary School was so pleased to see the improvement in our positive student culture. We saw this in staff reports of decreased bullying, parent reports of decreased bullying, student reports of decreased bullying, and really good increases in student reports of kindness towards one another. This wasn't a surprise because we have in the past 2 years brought on an assistant principal and put in a lot of work in our behavior systems, in our recess monitoring and our behavior response systems. And this is a big win for us and the results of some really good work over the past couple of years by our staff and our school community. Something that was kind of surprising in our data based on the work that we've done is this sense of students not feeling recognized by the staff for their positive behaviors or their successes. So our staff also have been feeling a decrease in opportunities for collaboration and opportunities to give feedback. Oh, I broke the rule just like Devin. I put 2 down there. So for the student concern, some of our staff have been already implementing some systems in their classrooms to more specifically recognize students for positive contributions, positive behaviors. We have some systems in place to recognize positive behaviors already. And we're going to be taking a look at those this summer during the PBIS Institute and how we can revamp those to make sure they're really consistent across our school. And then for the staff, we've been implementing more ways in our staff meetings for staff to give feedback. And we're planning some collaboration opportunities for next year into our schedule.
Thank you, Maggie.
Hi. So I was thinking for Aaron. So in terms of a highlight, the staff report significantly increased visibility and accessibility of building administration, which is really a testament to the work of Tom and Aaron to really be visible in the hallways. It went up by 14%. So that was definitely something that Aaron wanted to highlight out of the results of the Quaglia data. In terms of the topic of concern, there was a slight decrease by 2% in student perceptions that adults and students work together to make our school better. And so Aaron was highlighting the work of the agentic environment working group. That's something to really dig into to foster dialogue among students and faculty and really increase student agency and voice in the school.
Thank you. And then overall, we really want to demonstrate that this survey data is used as an important data resource for many of our inquiries. We look at our test scores and we look at individual student data, but having an opportunity to balance that with the culture survey, which is students, staff, and parents, is really helpful for us. A topic of concern is parent participation was not as strong this year. So talking to principals of how do we make sure we get parents' input in this discussion of culture. We don't want to hear only when there's an issue. We want to hear all the time so we can get better. And as you can see by this, it really does inform the work of our faculty, staff, and leadership team. And we just want to make sure we promote the importance of providing feedback on the culture of NVSU from parents and staff. So this is really an opportunity, anonymous, to collect really meaningful information and that we can track over a number of years. So we're really looking to how do we aggregate the data a little bit better so we can start to really, fine tune when we move a certain lever, what happens and how is that reflected in our culture data.
Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Devin.
Super quickly, just for what it's worth, that was a concern that I had there first that I didn't keep there because we were only allowed 2 and I didn't want to break 2 rules. But to put in perspective, there's 90 students at Prosser Valley, and this year we had 19 parents take the survey. So that's just one school, but definitely a concern. We got to get that rate of completion.
Thank you, Devin. Questions? Presentation, you can look at the full data for any of our school campuses. So if you want to do, Raf did an amazing job of kind of breaking it down, comparison from year to year and all the different areas. So if you want to do a deep dive, the presentation has each of the full Quaglia data presentation over multiple years.
Any comments or questions? Can't see this.
Oops, sorry. All right.
All right, well, thank you very much. Good information. We are now going to have a PCB update presentation from Joe Wagoli, Losing Grounds, and Ralph Adamek and Sherry.
So give me a second to pull up that presentation. A second. Now this will look a little familiar. This is an update from a presentation Raph and I gave a few years ago. Thank you, Julie. And so let me get it to this point here. There we go. All right. So as many of you know, there's been some changing information about PCB testing. So it was, Raph and I decided it was important to start again. How do we get here? What are PCBs about? And where are we needing to make some decision points in the near future? So first, we're going to talk about the ABCs of PCBs. We're going to look at the AOE guidance thus far. We're gonna look at some options that MVSU have regarding this. It's not a pause, and then we'll answer what questions we can answer. You wanna do this part?
Sure.
Perhaps this.
So PCBs, are a class of compounds that were really widely used in construction materials from 1950 to 1979. The list of things that they were used in is exhaustive: paints, varnishes, lacquers, plastic and rubber around, electrical cables, insulation materials, adhesives, tape, caulk, grout, acoustic ceiling tiles, all sorts of different pieces, sprayed on fiberproof. So some of these materials have more PCBs than others. The EPA is aware of caulk that is made up of 50% of PCBs. So caulk around windows and caulks that was used in buildings between 1950 and 1979 are a huge concern. This wide variety of sources can make it incredibly difficult to track down and to remediate. You can imagine if you test the PCBs and then you try to find those, that's a really long list, and that's not even all of them. So it's very difficult to track back. So off-gassing of those materials, so those materials putting it into the air, is the primary route of exposure. And the EPA has determined that PCBs are probably carcinogens. And the WHO has said they are definitely carcinogens. And high levels of exposure can cause all sorts of non-carcinogenic effects as well. So they're a serious threat, and something to be concerned with.
Here we go. So how did we get here? So back in 2020, people will remember, I hope, that Burlington High School did test for PCBs. As a result of their fundings, the Vermont passed Act 74 in June 2021 that began establishing what are the levels for acceptable PCB presence in each of our buildings. As a result of that report, or that act, which basically, and Raf's dug deeply into this, really was a allocation of money towards the Department of Health to begin to investigate and assess the presence of PCBs in our schools. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then in 2021 November, the Department of Health set the standard acceptable in Vermont, depending upon the age of each student. And then AOE released operational guidance in December of 2022. And that told us at what level could we have students in the building, at what level did we need to remove students from the building.
Just to confirm, it was the age of the students in the building, not the age of the school itself.
Well, both of those are factors. So it really is buildings that were built prior to 1980, the materials used. And then when assessing the presence of PCBs, how many parts per million? Parts per, we'll get there.
Nanogram per meter squared.
Thank you. So in 2021, the Vermont legislature required that by 2024, it's 2025 now, all schools built or renovated prior to 1980 be tested for PCBs in the indoor air. Also in 2021, the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, was given authority to regulate releases of PCBs from building materials into indoor air. And I put the memo link in the presentation. And this is what came.
So one of the most important questions is, if you're measuring for PCBs, what level is going to initiate some action? And that's a really hard thing to answer. And what you'll see here are two separate charts. So the top chart was from the Vermont Department of Health memo in 2021 around PCBs in indoor air quality in schools. And you'll see that they have a different level set for pre-K and kindergarten through 6th grade, and then 7th grade to adult. This is compared, and so these units are the same, as Matt said, they're nanograms per meter cubed. In the EPA guidance from 2017, you'll see that the numbers are really different. And so there's all sorts of questions as to why these things are different. Vermont cites some changes in science. Things changed between 2021 and 2017. But the effect of this is that if we test our buildings and we exceed any of the levels that are the school action level on the top chart there, there are occupancy plans that go into place. And these can vary from limiting a room to a certain number of hours per day, to closing a room, to closing a wing, to closing an entire building until the levels come down. So the levels are very important in this conversation.
So what's new? So we were slated to test this summer at our middle school and high school and at Woodstock Elementary. We received the following information on May 16th from the Secretary of Education, that for schools scheduled for PCB testing after June 2024 that have not yet tested, future testing will occur in scheduled order as funding becomes available. For initial indoor air quality testing, initial air quality testing includes inventory followed by indoor air sampling. In addition, that's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 was, at this time, the Agency of Natural Resources is prioritizing funding work at specific schools with elevated concentrations of PCBs in indoor air. These are buildings that were already tested and identified as having PCB levels above what is recommended. The ANR wants to support schools who wish to move forward using their funds to continue investigating, mitigating, and responding to PCB releases. The ANR will work to reimburse school-funded work when additional funding becomes available. All PCB-related work requires review and approval by the Department of Environmental Conservation, which has been a nightmare when I speak to other superintendents, before work is started to ensure compliance with rules and regulations and to be eligible for reimbursement. So it's not a pause, it's saying, we'll get to you when we have the money. So it really puts us in a challenging position.
So is it possible that there are schools that have not been tested that are much higher than schools that have been tested and identified and are being remediated now?
Correct. So MVSU has two options. MVSU board chooses option 1, MVSU board chooses to wait to test the middle school, high school, and west until state funding is available to cover the cost for testing. Or option 2, MVSU board authorizes PCB testing for the middle school, high school, and west with costs to be covered through the local budget. Pros and cons. So option 1, pros, local tax dollars are not used to cover the costs of testing, which may be up to $500,000. That's based on our conversations with Hartford School District and their facilities, based on the testing they did. So there's not just, we test, the testing is around $30,000. But if elevated levels are found, then you have to do material testing to find, determine where the presence and what you do. For Hartford, the testing started last September. They're just still now getting the latest data. So it takes a long period of time. Costs would be included in our per pupil spend. Students remain in their school buildings while potential state funding for renovation and new construction are realized. Cons, communities would not know the extent of PCB exposure in our 2 buildings and the needs for remediation. And so the converse is true if we pursue option 2. Pros, communities would know the extent of PCB exposure in our 2 buildings and the need for remediation. Possibly could better represent the need for a new facility at the middle school, high school campus. And the cons, local tax dollars are used to cover the cost of testing, which could be up to $500,000. The cost would be included in our per pupil spend, pushing us further over the spending threshold. And if the presence of PCBs are significant, could mean the displacement of elementary and secondary students for an extended period of time. That's where we are today. Lots of questions.
I'll defer since I've been very local to me.
Oh, okay, I was just wondering why the acceptable levels went up for high school, because I'm a high schooler, I get it, but like, is there a scientific reason?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, toxicology basically, so as people are growing, there's younger bodies are more susceptible to different things. And so generally the acceptable use limits for younger people is lower as their brains and bodies are developing. And as you approach, adulthood, it comes closer to adulthood.
But I'm just wondering why it went back down after high school years. Unless I read that wrong.
Yeah, I don't think it's very.
No, I think they're two different.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah, the 19 plus adults 450.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a good question.
That's from
Thank
the
you.
EP. That's a great observation. I don't know why.
I would argue that that's incorrect.
Yes.
Specifically because
Does
fif-
someone have a
15
good
through
data?
19, no, you're still developing, your brain's still developing, 15 through 19. Again, I'll defer to Laura.
Laura?
Hi, yeah, so I'm on the Buildings and Grounds, committee, and I wanted to add that we have discussed, techniques that we were going to use in order to try to lower our PCB level in our school, in the, anticipation of being tested. And I would like to suggest that if we were to go with option one, we would go with it and still do those techniques that we were going to do. Um, because what we really want is to have lower PCBs, regardless of whether it's tested or not. So I think we should still do those things.
And we did, Laura, that was done over April vacation. Joe's on here, but I'm trying to
Okay.
give Joe a vacation day. So Joe's team did
Yeah.
clean all the air. Go ahead, Joe. Can't give him his day off.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we still have all intention of doing the deep cleaning that we slated for this summer. We're going to continue with that regardless. And yes, we did complete duct cleaning at Woodstock Elementary. We're about halfway through the high school, and as soon as school gets out, we'll probably do it. I would say the first half of July, and then both schools would have their ductwork cleaning, and then yeah, a deep clean where we'll go through and try to identify spots like where there's caulk and whatnot, and clean those to the best of our abilities. We'll be using HEPA filters, all the walls, ceilings, every square inch will be vacuumed. It certainly would be beneficial for us to continue down that route.
Yeah. And I think that should be communicated to our communities. That regardless of the fact that the testing is not going to take place, we are being proactive to try to reduce PCB levels in our schools.
I assume there's a standard way of testing where air moving and the windows closed or something, right? I mean, you can't be having all kinds of just go in a room and test, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean,
Yeah.
it varies. Yeah, there is a standard way, and I think, you know, you want to have something that represents what the.
Air moving in the ducts and the windows closed, I would, or something like that.
Right, something, I mean, ideally for us, it's around like, what would be the what would we experiencing in winter? You know,
Okay,
winter
right,
when we have the
right.
windows closed and.
Right, okay.
Josh?
So from a standpoint of thinking.
It'd be similar.
I was gonna say, from the standpoint of looking at this from a cost perspective, wouldn't we be doing an injustice to our students not by doing option 2 and not doing option 1? I mean, we're going to increase our cost per pupil and our taxpayer impact significantly by approving this.
Yeah, that's one of the things we have to consider. Matt?
So I've been following the issue for some time, and I've noticed that the Vermont standards are like 80% lower than the EPA standards. But then when I read some of the results from neighboring schools like Hartford, they certainly had classrooms that tested above the national standard. So, and some were like extraordinarily higher, like 1,600, nanograms per meter cubed. And so whether we do the testing or not, I think we know there's some of it is in the air in our buildings that were built before 1980. And what I think we really want to know is like, where are the worst areas in the school? And is it possible to do some sample testing that's not $500,000? In my profession, we have to do geotechnical testing of 700, 800,000 acre sites before we can build on them. And we'll just go around and do representative samples, even though 5 years later, we might sample every 10 meters. So is there an approach like that where we could do some, like, just, try to like do a couple different areas of the building, like the gym, cafeteria? I don't know if Joe knows the answer to that. Is there an alternative to testing that's not 500,000?
So the initial testing is approximately $30,000. It is then if you find the presence of elevated PCBs and begin to explore deeper into where specifically within those spaces are the areas that are emitting the PCBs. That's when you start running up the additional dollars. I've heard. Joe, is that what conversations you've had, Joe?
Yeah. So what they do is a general test. If folks are familiar with a radon test, it's pretty much the same thing. It kind of, they go by square footage, and depending on rooms, they'll have sensors in there. Once they detect PCBs, they'll try to narrow it down. As Raf indicated, it's in so many materials. What they'll actually do is start taking samples and determine where the PCBs are located. Could be paint, could be caulk, could be a number of things. Generally, that's how they'll go about it. They spent 220,000 in Hartford on the high school with initial testing, and then they spent just over another 100,000 in some more actual material testing to narrow down the areas that were getting high readings.
Go ahead, Anna.
So it sounds like maybe that Killington has some information on their PCBs and we would be doing middle school, high school and Woodstock Elementary. Would the expectation be that at some point we would do all of the campuses? And is there, I'm getting yes from some and no from others.
So the expectation from the state is first the middle school, high school and west, because they were built prior to 1980. According to the state of Vermont, Killington and I think Barnard, Joe, is scheduled also for testing.
Reading.
Reading.
Yeah, the only other two schools, yeah, Killington and Reading are the other two slated to be tested.
Okay.
But they weren't built before 1980? We still testing?
Parts of the work.
Parts, okay.
Yeah, so I'm wondering along the lines of what Matt was saying is finding more targeted, maybe approach to where the testing is happening. And my opinion is it's inhumane not to do this testing, even if it's gonna cost our taxpayers more dollars, right? We could have had a new campus and this wouldn't be an issue. And I can't rightfully sit at this table with two students and fellow parents and say that we should do this because of money.
And teachers that are there.
Yeah, absolutely, and family members who work for the district as well, yeah. I guess it's more the students because they have smaller bodies, right, and they're more apt to be affected by these.
If we're talking like $30,000, is there anything stopping us from like doing a fundraiser, setting out a community notice, looking for a grant? Cause I feel like we've had $1 million+ donations. I'm sure that there is some family somewhere that would be more than happy to donate 30K so we could get the initial testing.
And anything can be explored on that front.
Is there like a legal conflict with that or?
I don't think so.
If we do the testing and if they find PCBs, it comes from the taxes that the town pays, not from our school budget.
No, it's from our school budget.
Which the taxes that the town pays.
I mean, with the idea that it's possible it would be paid back in the future, but not guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Right.
I mean, I think, you know, like with the climate, we're at a great risk of losing our entire school right now. And I think that, you know, I think that community engagement and awareness is very low in this. I think the parents are very aware of this, the school board is, but outside of this, you know, I understand constituents in Woodstock are saying, oh, we can have our sewage system because we're not building a new school, and they don't understand the economic impact of our school and how important this school is, and it's the number one, maybe the number two economic driver of this town as well. So, you know, also as a parent, and I think that we should do the testing.
Well, we have discussed holding a community forum, perhaps it's sometime over the summer, perhaps in August, when families have finished their vacation or getting ready to come back to school. Because there probably will be more information and changes in the legislature perhaps, so we would know whether or not they're gonna be looking to build these hub schools. On the other side of that, there's a lot of people who are mobilizing now and trying, as you know, sir, are trying to make the case that we should be a hub school because of the strong program we have for academics and craft programs, athletics, all of those things. So it's a matter of, you know, those two groups were probably would interface with each other, but if that can be moved forward and they come up with a funding strategy and so forth, but it will still take at least 3 years.
To do testing? Or
No,
to figure out what
build a
goes on?
school. To
Yeah.
build- you can't build a school like that overnight. And the other thing is that, they probably won't build it for us. We have to have some more districts or some more schools come together with us in order to have it big enough in the size that they're putting out there as they want. We're close to qualifying, they say.
Maybe I was like conflating two issues, like we've got the PCB issue and we've got this school issue.
Right, so I think the plan is to keep moving forward on making the case for the new school. That's definitely what I'm reading.
Yes,
And,
definitely, and I'd like to talk about that with like the community engagement committee and how it can
Yeah.
help and the one pager and all that, but this PCB. Maybe I think it would bring awareness to, you know, the constituents ignored all the, you know, all the tours of the high school and what kind of shapes it's in. And maybe this would highlight it more, you know, bring aware, you know, and then also putting all the teachers and kids in danger, like. if
Right,
we
I mean-
knowingly do that.
right, there's no school that has capacity near us for us to ship kids to, Hartford's no option. People are suggesting that just send all the kids to Hartford was one of the strategies, and we're like, well, not now. And when you're talking about long bus rides, Rutland is, that no high school really has been built to the capacity that they need. So, I mean, there's nowhere to go, so we're looking at trailers out there on the lawn.
So what would we do?
The
if we
Union
do find
Arena,
the
probably
PCBs?
co-opt a couple rooms here and.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we would have to have a plan, which Sherry has been working on a plan as well as others. As to what to do if we had to ultimately quickly shut down. But as you know, in Hartford, they're only looking at certain areas right now to close down, and they're looking at ways, if they do that, where to move the kids and still keep them on that campus. Because of the complex structure of schedules, as we heard. You know, the teachers have to be able to get to the various classes. So that's why, and we can't go down there farther because it's the floodplain. So, yeah, we're strapped. Yes.
Has this
Joaquin?
building been tested before, the high school? middle
No.
school? No. Okay,
No,
think it would be valuable to test it.
well,
Just to clarify, so if we went through with the $30,000 testing and we did find elevated levels of PCB, we would have to like do the 500K.
well, however much they charge us.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
but we would have to do that.
yeah,
Okay,
it would be wrong not to,
yes.
morally wrong. Josh?
So that was my biggest concerns looking at this was, where do our kids go if we test and we find that we are above the standards that the EPA sets? What are we going to do? Our students don't have anywhere to go. Hartford's already strapped because half their schools closed due to this same issue. So it's one of those catch-22 type of situations.
Right, and it may be that there's some areas of the school that could still be used. That's the unknown. We don't know how big the problem is.
Somebody mentioned portables or that's what happened in my elementary school in Arizona. I think we had issues and we had a lot of, it was like trailers. And
Yeah.
and that's what it was. So there are solutions. It's not like there's no.
They're very expensive, I might add.
Yeah, but we don't have to like necessarily do AC because it's, you know, because it's winter like you did in Arizona, so.
We did price them out. It was. For Joe, that was 100,000 per double class. I mean, we've mapped out the costs. It's still pretty significant. Plus, we'd have to run, you know, sewage with water and electronics and, you know, connectivity. I mean, there is an option. It would be the football field.
Use
space.
And the hope would be that it would be similar to Hartford, where it's areas of contamination as opposed to what areas are still usable, maximizing the space we have. We have Union Arena, that could be an option. I mean, I think we've been trying to play around, what would we do based on not just this, it's not just PCBs. If we lose a section of the building due to heating or the septic system, or there are lots of reasons we could lose portions of that building.
Lara?
Yeah, I just want to point out that if we go down the testing road and we spend the $30,000 and we hit, and then we have to spend up to $500,000 just to do more testing, that's just the money we'd have to spend for testing. We would then have to come up with the X number of dollars in order to fix it. And again, there's this vague promise that we might get reimbursed for that someday, but honestly, the way things are going, we can't count on that.
No. Joe?
Yeah, just want to clarify a couple things. First of all, the price, 30,000 would probably be the cost of doing Woodstock Elementary, between 30 and 50. The high school, the initial testing would probably be between about 150 to 200. Then initial testing after that to kind of narrow it down might kick us up a little bit higher. The cost of doing school classrooms on the football field, I think Jim and I came up with a number close to just under $1 million for it to be set up. And I forgot the total amount of classrooms, but I think we had 6 or 8 classrooms out there. And they were about 100,000 a piece, plus the infrastructure, the utilities, and sewer and septic, all that kind of stuff.
Have the details of one of our building options when we were looking at putting the new building options. Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Have, that I can share.
Joe, maybe you know this, but has any school that has a building that was built before 1980 that has done their testing actually come back with results that allowed all their classrooms to stay open? Or is this just like a foregone conclusion that everyone who tests fails? Like, do
No,
we know?
actually, there have been a number of there have been a number of schools who have tested and came back under, that were built before the 80s.
It's really hard to predict.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
I do have a feeling that the Woodstock schools.
More in time, Joe, we didn't catch that.
I do think the Woodstock schools have a great chance.
Of failing or passing? We couldn't hear you.
One more time, Joe, we didn't hear you.
My apologies. Yeah, I do think the 2 Woodstock schools have a high probability of hitting, just because they were built in the 50s, both of them, and PCBs were widely used more in the earlier stages. And again, in 1980 they stopped. So I do think those 2 schools, whereas Reading and Killington had some rehab done to them. Not that the Woodstock schools haven't, but they've had some renovation. So I do think they have a slighter chance of not hitting. But I do think the 2 Woodstock schools, we would be lucky if we didn't see results that would impact us.
John?
I seem to remember hearing that there was a school that even remediated afterward and their levels came back even higher. Also, I mean,
That's
that's
correct.
a possibility.
That's what happened in Bellows Falls. They put in ventilators after, and they did everything. So the state tends to push more towards covering it up as opposed to removal. That's why Hartford is dragging out the way they are. Their board and their superintendent really believe that they want to do more than containment. If you do containment, then you have to test quarterly, which is $25,000 a pop. So that's an annual cost into perpetuity of $100,000 per year. So the board of Hartford and the superintendent really push that. They do not want to remediate. The only way they want to remediate is by removing those portions of the building. But that's true. I mean, the most northern high school, that school district were really put into really significant situations. So it's incredibly impactful, and the process that you have to go through with the DEC is, they don't make it easy.
Sorry.
The superintendent at Hartford, Katie Sutton, has offered to meet with the community if we had a public forum, as well as Rath has some individuals that he could bring forward that might be able to give some more information about PCBs if the board chooses to pursue having a community forum.
Bob?
You're muted.
Bob, you're muted.
Bob, we can't hear you. Okay,
Sorry.
go.
Is this a decision that's going to be made tonight by the board? If so, I say we move ahead and do it. I mean,
I
make
don't
the
think
decision.
we're ready yet, Bob. I think the buildings and grounds should bring that forward.
Yeah, well, then if that's what we're going to do, then I say let's refer it back to building and grounds for more consideration.
Yes, and we would like to have the communities have some input as well.
I'm not really sure how you're going to do that, but other than announce the building and grounds committee meetings and invite the public to come. But I just think we should move ahead, however we want to move.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? All right, then Jim is going to talk to us about the TAN approval.
Before we move on, do we have a general idea of the timeline? Because I was gonna make the motion also.
Well, we don't have Katie Reed here, so I think that it should go through their committee.
Okay.
So they'll have a meeting in 2 weeks. And, and everyone can weigh in on what they're thinking. But I do really think we should have a public forum. It can be done through Zoom and or in person. And we'll listen to the community.
Okay.
Hey, Jim?
All right. Is that time of year when the board has to approve our annual tax anticipation note? These are funds that we need to borrow to cover the funding gap between July 1st, when our fiscal year starts, and the fall and winter when we start getting tax revenues. We've done several things this year. Thank you very much. That have reduced the amount of money that we need to borrow. The biggest one was just converting our banknote into a bond, which pushes the payment into November when we have tax revenues, so we don't have to borrow that money. Instead, so we were paying in July, borrowing $1 million so we could pay off a note. Now we don't have to borrow that. So that immediately dropped our TAN by $1 million. The other good thing is interest rates, which are still, in my opinion, high, have come down to 5.75% from 6.5% last year. So what we're proposing, what I've got all the documents for, in Close and I've been working with Mascoma Bank, who is our bank, for all of our banking activities, to borrow 2.5 million for 12 months. In a tax anticipation note, I have a resolution that I need board members to sign, and a note that needs your signature about 15 times, and life will be good. Any questions?
Do we have a motion on the table?
I make the motion.
Sarah's gonna read something that,
I motion that the board authorize a tax anticipation note for $2,500,000 for FY 26 operating expenses, understanding that the note matures on June 30th, 2026, and the anticipated final interest rate is 5.75%. The anticipated final interest rate may change due to a fluctuation in the federal interest rate.
I'll second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstaining? What was that, Josh? You're opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. And Jim, do you have the document here tonight for
I
those who are
do.
here? And the board members who aren't here, could you drop by in the next couple of days over here and get your signature on the document?
I will keep the note and the other when it's. Like a roll call. Yeah, do we have to do a roll call?
There's only one.
There's only.
Do we need a roll call for one? Nay. So this is why we phone a friend. Phoning the friend.
Sorry.
Technically by statute, yes.
All right, I will do the roll call. Please either put your Zoom hand up or your voice. Heather Lawler.
Aye.
Corinne Park. I don't think she's here. Katie Reed is not here. And Carl?
No.
Bob Cream?
Aye.
Lydia Locke?
Aye.
Matt Stout?
Aye.
Sam is not here. Sarit?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Ryan is not here, I don't think. Elliot?
Aye.
Josh?
Nay.
Anna?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And Ernie's not here. All right, the vote is passed. And I will send around the.
If you
I'll keep this one.
want to add. a new member, or your new
Point to
member.
Aye.
Thank you. Actually, Gina, when you sign here, just sign with Ernie Fernandez and cross it out and put your name on it. All
In
right.
his space.
Not Ernie, she
Thank you.
filled the Reading position, right?
A position that's not there, so, sorry. Well, actually, then why don't you just cross his name out anyway and write yours in Reading?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. All right, we'll keep moving on the agenda. We have. All right, we have a grievance to listen to and then to decide whether we support it or do not support it. I've sent the board a packet with the documents, 4 documents from our position, and if people here want a paper copy now, there's copies for you. But the plan for this is that yeah, there's plenty of them. The plan is that, first we'll hear from the ESP leaders regarding the use of Red Rover as a means for submitting their time each day. They will present the grievance to us against using Red Rover, then we will ask clarifying questions to the support staff team. After which, I'll make a presentation of our position on this grievance. And then the board will discuss and vote to either deny the grievance or recommend that it be upheld. So that's the plan. So Julie, and I don't know if you have others who are planning to speak. Is Selena still on? Is who?
Selena.
Yes, Selena is on.
Okay.
I'll take the other seat. Sure.
So I'm Julie Dupont, educational support personnel, former vice president. I'm currently the member contact person, but I was the vice president when we filed this grievance. Can you tell me what we shared?
Yep.
So I don't repeat myself.
Yep. It's the original grievance and then Sherry's report, that handout that the business office put together to
Okay.
discuss.
But,
fix
okay,
something.
because we had some data additional data we had sent to the board. I'm also lead negotiator, so we were trying to work on this grievance. Red Rover time clock is something that is new, that was, sent out, I believe, in July. The previous back history is, support staff have done paper timesheets for the last 2 years. Previous to that, we didn't have any way to do timesheets. We weren't required to. Currently, the teachers are not required to do this. So what the big thing was that it was a unilateral change to working conditions, and it's something that should have been bargained. So that is why the grievance came about. And then we did that, and then it was denied. We needed to get more devices for people to clock in, because not everybody has a school issued device. People are voluntarily, which sometimes it's voluntold, to use their personal cell phones as a clock in. It's my understanding that you can only clock in if you're in your home school. So somebody may have to correct me. So we have some people that still fill out timesheets because we have drivers, we have special transportation. Overtime has to be pre-approved, so they still have to do paper timesheets. So we also collected data from each of the schools and we did share that.
Yep,
That's in there?
That's in
Okay. Okay, so that's in the document. And then during negotiations, we had a few more discussions, and then more data was presented, and I just want to share a couple more things. I believe this one was shared. And this is from somebody who has worked in the district for 25 years. And we feel it puts a lot of work if somebody forgets to clock in on our admin assistants. Whereas we did the paper timesheets, and yes, they collected them and then they sent them off. It isn't as flexible either for some of us that work either as a coach or if we get things before or after school. So I'm just gonna read a few notes that were some observations about Red Rover. So when someone forgets, and this is a 25-year employee, when someone forgets or needs to adjust a mistake, they create extra work. In our school, it would be for Heather Fernandez. Even using my phone to remind me to clock in or out, I frequently forget to use Red Rover. If phones are required to be locked in yonder pouches next year, which I support, this person support, I will no longer have a reminder to clock in or out. We didn't even touch on that about personal cell phones for staff not being able to use those. I prefer the paper logs over Red Rover. This allows me to correct my own mistakes without creating work for others. I wasn't very good at remembering to use the timesheets, but I could complete them without bothering my colleagues who are already very busy. I don't recall if a reason behind the switch to Red Rover or timesheets was discussed with support staff. I worked in the district for 24 years without the need to clock in or out. So that was that. Then a few more things came up as we were reviewing some of the items for negotiations, separate bucket. But these were brought forward, and I had not shared these yet, because I just got these. Person is, what if I'm running errands for school? Before school, how do I clock in if I am not connected to the Wi-Fi? What if employees are not actually taking a lunch break? How will you know to pay them extra? Or how will you know that they clocked out 30 minutes early because they didn't have to take a lunch, not because they are skipping 30 minutes? All educational support staff in their contract are allotted a 30-minute lunch. And that's in the current bargaining agreement. Waste of time to have to do this at the start and end of the day. Often we are bombarded with a million things to do and students asking us questions. This is somebody who works actively in a classroom. And it is difficult to remember to clock in. Even more of a waste of time for the administrative assistants who have to fix our time clocks for us. What do I do? This is a coach when I have to leave early for a game. I shouldn't be docked pay for coaching. Do we clock in and out for education days off campus? What if we leave for 3 hours of education time in the middle of the day? If I work 20 minutes over, should I really be emailing my principal every time saying that I'm going to be leaving 20 minutes early? Or do I have to wait for a response? So those are some of the things, and the big thing is that it was a unilateral change in working conditions, and we wanted to bargain it, or what we requested was go back to the way we did it before. And there's a rounding issue too. And I'm not sure how the rounding works. I can just speak on what happens to me when I clock in. I usually get here, I'm usually one of the first people to get here anywhere between 6:30 and 6:45. So if I'm here at like 6:38, when I clock in, it says I'm here at 6:45. So then I'm gonna watch the clock and I'm gonna make sure I get my time in, so 2:45. So what has happened with those minutes from 6:38 to 2:45? So I'm donating time. That's the way I feel, and I'm not the expert on the software. And, we asked that it be, negotiated. And I think that we were using a time clock maybe to help facilitate information being inputted into payroll, but it wasn't anything that we sat and discussed. So I think those were the biggest points. And then the information you shared prior in the board package. Yeah, so we need to assert that this is a unilateral change in working conditions. You need to bargain, changes, or cease the practice. That's what we're asking. And I also I was reading our collective bargaining agreement. And we did work on, in negotiations, one of the things that I think may help bring us to maybe using the time clock on a regular basis, but after it's negotiated, is changing our pay back from the 1st and 15th of the month to a bi-weekly payroll. And Mr. Fenn is on the negotiating team, and I think that's what we did work on. Bear with me while I find the page. I think it's right here. And I think it's on page 1914.2, because to me, this would be an amendment to our current CBA. And it talks about, notwithstanding the above language, upon the written request of either the boards or the association, the parties agree to have their representatives meet during the terms of this. It's MA master agreement, but we have changed the terminology collective bargaining agreement for the purposes of discussing any possible amendments, deletions, or additions. So it felt like we were presented this information without any input. And so that's why we filed the grievance. We did work with all the schools and with RAF to make sure there were at least a few kiosks, like iPads set up so people could access it. But not everybody has a school issued device, and not everybody has access, so they are using their personal devices. But the biggest thing was, it wasn't, it was a unilateral change in working conditions and it wasn't negotiated. I think that's it.
So I'll invite the board to ask questions.
Unless,
Something you didn't
yeah,
understand.
Selena, does she have anything else to add?
Go ahead, Selena.
So one issue that I have seen with Red Rover is, for instance, today I wasn't feeling well, so I needed to leave a little bit early. But because it wasn't more than 1 hour prior to me clocking out, I was not able to put it in as sick time. So tomorrow when I get there, I'll have to fill out a timesheet correction form. And Joe's on vacation, so it's either going to wait until he gets back to get corrected, or my administrative secretary will have to fix it.
So yeah, on that one sheet of talking to people as they started to use it this fall, the biggest thing that struck me was something about low morale. Low morale of ESP, more work for admin assistants. That was a repetitive comment. It's on your sideways pie chart.
Yeah, we have a reformatted version. Because, there's been some business office responses provided,
Okay,
so.
which I was not aware of.
Well, it was prepared for this. Does the board have any clarifying questions?
I have a question. Are there any downsides to using paper timesheets?
That's what I'm gonna talk about in the response from the board. Yes.
It sounds like there's a particular cohort that is being asked to use Red Rover. And I just need to know whether I need to recuse myself, because food services, is food services one of the groups that is using that? Okay, thank you for letting me know.
Yes.
So just a process question. So they filed the grievance in September. And then the superintendent denied it. And now it's at the board. So
We had been working through this on negotiations and talking about it, and there were a number of steps that I'll outline that happened between September and now.
so if we have like an up or down vote tonight as a board, would we be voting to like just uphold their grievance and then that would move it back into a negotiation?
Well, it's the negotiations piece is a separate piece of it, but we had some conversations. Usually things start with a conversation. In this case, there wasn't one, it was a grievance that was brought to us. And so then we had some conversations. I met with Julie and Stephen Stuntz, the president of the organization. And we agreed that perhaps we should collect some information. And Julie did collect some information, and then it went to both Linda LaPret and Raina and Jim, particularly to resolve quite a few of the things that, if everything that was brought up was resolved, these things that came in today, most of those were new items. So I don't know why that wasn't provided early, if that was a problem. There was an opportunity for people to give input and get these things fixed. In which cases, there's everyone who wants a kiosk can have a kiosk, everyone who doesn't want to use their phone has a computer somewhere or a kiosk somewhere in their buildings. And in Jim's note, it says where it is. So that access issue would not be a problem. Also addressing the workarounds where an employee starts work at 7 to pick up a student and transport them. They have a way, some of them have ability to access from the time they start in their home if it's a regular thing. We have a couple of other employees who don't always start in the same workplace. They work in different buildings, or they might have to go to a hardware store, so they have remote access. They don't have to do a paper timesheet. But in these extra things, like the coach situation, that needs to be addressed probably with a paper form. But it's much fewer than there was before with the collection of all those.
So, question.
Heather entering it up. Heather?
Thank you. I want to start with saying I greatly respect our paraprofessionals and the work they put in, and the complexities of their work. And I'd like to put my voice forward to say that automation of processes are critical for school success. So saying this is a substantive change in work environment would be akin to saying asking teachers to go from a paper grade book to a digital grade book could be grievable, or going from having attendance be on paper to attendance being on software being grievable. I think we need to be really careful because we know this is how things are going. And we need to accommodate their needs without making automation or software applications grievable. That's my opinion. Thank you.
So maybe I should start in with what our position is. Sherry denied the grievance. You have the access to read that. For one thing, the CBA does not have any mention of how time is accounted for hourly workers, therefore a grievance is invalid because it's not in the CBA, it's a procedure. 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, a paper timesheet was implemented with no negotiations at all, no complaints, until it changed to an automated system. The Fair Labor Standard Act requires the employer to keep accurate and complete work hour records. Red Rover does that. A payroll position was eliminated when budget cuts were necessary. Part of the solution was adding up all the timesheets. Collected electronically, there's greater efficiency about that person. So it would become somebody else's job. All of the complaints in the document that were collected by the ESP have been resolved by providing more kiosks, access to more computers, and providing a step-by-step handout for all of the various scenarios that an employee might encounter. There was also training offered, and anyone who asked for it got training, got more help. The cost of the Red Rover system is $9,686 versus a payroll position of $100,000, including salary and benefits. Paper timesheets were not always accurate regarding the actual hours worked. Red Rover provides accurate information on the time worked, and it ensures greater accountability for employees to be accurate in their hours worked. And for that reason, my recommendation is that the board deny the grievance on the same basis as the superintendent. So if you have more questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, or Jim can jump in, John, because we were on the negotiations team. Ryan isn't here, so.
We did negotiate the written timesheets. We had a discussion.
Well, that's not a negotiation, that's a discussion.
Okay.
And so perhaps it would have been good to have a discussion about the electronics and to be honest about some of the reasons why it was wanted. So I admit that I would agree that, yeah.
When you get an email, 7/1, you need to start using this, you don't even know what it is. It's like.
Yes, and I think that was everyone involved in that tried to help work it in. The employees in the summer had the whole 2 months not to be worrying about making mistakes. And then when the school year employees came in, from what I understand, they would then explain how to do it. And when people did voice a complaint, which you provided some of it, every step was taken by the business office to try to rectify those concerns. And I would think by the end of the year, I find it hard to believe, and this is just my opinion, that people are still regularly forgetting to clock in. It's something you do 5 days a week.
My kiosk disappeared from my desktop the other day, and I didn't know on the regular website, you had to click twice to clock in. So, yeah, I had to do an exception report the other day. But my question is the rounding issue. Can somebody explain that to me?
I have to look to you, Jim, or Raina.
Or you can get back to us,
Yeah.
because
Well, as an employee who used to have to clock in my old job, it does round up. If you get here at 7:37, it's gonna log you in at 7:45. If you leave at 2:37, it will log you out at 2:45. So that's all you have to do. I mean.
Well, except your job may not allow you to leave at 2:37 if you're dealing with like issue, right? You can't always cut your day short.
But if you're worried about, I'm just doing my 8 hours, you can just do your 8 hours. If you have an issue where you stay, then you get into overtime.
You
I
have
mean,
to
you
have
can clock
pre-approved
out
overtime.
at any time past that, but if you want to, if you're worried about rounding, you just. On the other end of the day, log out at the same time to get your rounded number.
So we use the federally approved quarter hour process of rounding. So first 7 minutes rounds backwards, from that point on, it rounds forward. So if you I'm gonna correct you, if you log in at 7:37, it rounds you to 7:30. If you log in at 7:38, it rounds you to 7:45.
I can say the dynamics around that rounding as an employee of Dartmouth Health, I'm very intimately aware of it. And I hear you, and also it is common practice to have these rounding practices with clock-ins, with electronic clock-ins. And it can work to your benefit or not to your benefit, depending on.
Right, depending on how you.
Where in that quarter, 15 minutes you are.
My integrity is my integrity.
Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to know what basis is being used, either contractual, legal, or otherwise, to construe a procedural method of keeping track of time as having the slightest thing to do with a working condition. What basis are you using there to define it as a working condition?
we didn't do timesheets at all, and then we started doing timesheets, and then they changed to electronic. So, without discussing it. So that's what we.
Right, I think that it's the definition of a working conditions. I think our view is that it's a procedure. It's not a working condition. It's not changing your hours or changing your vacation time. And that is also the opinion of the school lawyer, because we did consult with her as well. I wouldn't deny a grievance if I hadn't heard what her view was to the chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
coming out.
So I guess, are there other people from the board that would like to make a comment?
Well, I guess I'll just ask, so a lot of the technical issues that were described, like. You go to log your hours, but you've already left the campus to go support a sporting event, and they should be getting paid for that, but. Sounds like you have to be connected to like the campus
No,
Wi-Fi.
you would put in I forget what, an exception note the next day, or even before you leave, to say you actually did. You were excused to leave, so that's an approved reason.
So if that happens, it's not being denied the time. There's a process to accommodate if there's a variation in the daily schedule.
Well, I guess it's in both, the administration's interest, and it would serve the employees better to like continue to fix the bugs and streamline it, because it is part of their working condition if they are spending time every day trying to fix an app or file new paperwork and get approvals. That's time they're not actually doing their jobs, right? So it's in our interest to make this as streamlined as possible and keep fixing app. And timesheet apps are notoriously bad. I've seen so many that are sold to companies as this miracle timesheet app, and they're really, really not good to work with. So I personally am gonna support the administration's position, the board's position to deny the grievance, but I just wanna know that we're really going to try to fix this tool so that it's not a complete pain in their necks every
Well,
day.
as I said, Matt, every single thing that was brought to the business office or through the grievance process was addressed. And that was the introduction of several other scenarios that never came to us, the negotiations or the business office and HP. So, that's why they're not accounted for. If somebody doesn't know, they can send an email anytime and it say, how do I handle this? I'm a coach, I leave early. But that piece, hadn't been brought forward to my knowledge. Jim?
So Carrie, Selena brought up a new issue today about not being able to log sick time.
Yeah.
For shit less than an hour a day. First time I've heard of it. I'll try to figure out how to address it tomorrow.
Mhm.
But if we don't know, we can't fix them. And so I appreciate your bringing it forward.
Selena?
Yeah, so the other issue is if we don't have internet, rather in the building or our personal devices are not connecting correctly, then we still can't clock in or out. So if there's no internet, which Prosper loses quite a bit, then I don't have 12 people at Prosper who need to use this, but at the high school there could be. That's an awful lot extra work for somebody, whether it's in HR or payroll or Heather, Scarlett in my instance. So if the internet's not working, we still cannot clock in or out.
Thank you, that's good to know. And I think we'll take that information back and figure out a system for that. Right now, it's the admin assistants who are collecting or who are filing those forms, I know that.
Thank you.
It would have been the payroll position, but we cut it to save money. Are we ready to vote? All right, I'm gonna ask everyone who's on screen to please show your hand if you agree, and if you don't agree, you can show your hand that way. So we don't have to do another roll call unless there's a nay. Thank you. Is there a motion to either deny or uphold the grievance?
I'll make a motion to deny the grievance.
Second.
Thank you for the second. And if you say aye, you are agreeing to deny the grievance. If you say nay, you are agreeing to uphold the grievance. All those in favor of denying the grievance, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And anyone opposed? Josh, you're opposed.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have to do a
I
roll.
need to, oh.
Oh, you should,
I need to
you just recuse, yeah. All right, so Bob Crane, what's your vote?
Aye.
Lara,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Josh,
Nay.
I think that's all the board members on board on the. Yeah, Matt,
Aye.
Elliot,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Anna,
Recuse.
Gina.
Aye.
Lydia.
Aye.
Sarit.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have denied the grievance and that will go back to the board to decide, to the support staff to decide if they want to take this grievance further. Thank you. All right, the next item is something we do every year to, no, we're not there yet.
Number 5.
Oh, yeah,
Yep, grant shares.
okay, yeah. So it's, if you're looking at your board book, it tells you basically that over the summer, sometimes employees are hired. And if we have to make them wait until we have a board meeting to approve their hiring, then it could cause a problem for them to not be able to start their insurance and things like that. So you'll get a review of all new hires at the monthly meeting, either starting in August and September. And so I'm gonna ask if somebody will make a motion to grant the chairs the authority to approve new hires through July. July, yeah, because August we can approve, yes.
I make a
Okay.
motion.
I'll second. All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, thank you. All right, now we're into the committee and working group updates. Finance committee first.
I'm gonna pull up notes. So we did meet and we talked about a number of things we've already talked about tonight, including the state legislation, the PCBs in the school. We also talked about the passage of the yield bill and so I think we just want all members of the board to understand that with the passage of that bill, there's good news that the actual tax rates in towns will go down and we will be able to say exactly how much more they're gonna go down when the CLAs are finalized in August. But the thing that's gonna make our job quite a bit harder is that the state put in, I think 117 million, 14 million, something like that, towards education, so less is coming from taxpayers. So their tax rate's going down, but when we compare next year's rate that is set based on our budget, when you put that new, nominator over the denominator, it's gonna look like a bigger percentage change. Unless the state comes through again and adds money. So even if like absolute dollars, we only increase our budget 10% or 5%. The rate of change could look like more than that because the state came in and put money in. So just beware of that. The other thing we talked about is the capital investment plans. This is something that the Building and Grounds Committee are familiar with. So Joe and Jim do a really good job of planning out, 5 years at a time, what things in our buildings need to be fixed that would be considered sort of capital investments, capital improvements. And they chart that out year by year, and they also write a justification for each one. So each project, if you need to update the security in this building or a bathroom, there'll be a little memo that says why it needs to be done. And then this plan will also show the source of the funding. So is it coming from our budget? Is it gonna have to be a new issuance of debt that the taxpayers approve? And so I'm only bringing this up because once it's kind of in a final form, Jim would like the board to adopt the capital investment plan as something that would like guide future budgeting and buildings and grounds decisions. But it would probably be adopted annually.
It'll be adopted and updated annually, and when it's adopted, it's adopted with the understanding that it will change the day after you adopt it. But because it's a plan, it's not cast in concrete, and when you set your budget, you use the plan as a tool in setting your budget, not as must gotta do. If that makes any sense.
So that is the entirety of my update. Our committee is much more involved after July when we start actually putting together the fiscal year 27 school budget.
Thank you. Any questions for the finance committee? All right, we'll move on to the policy committee.
Yeah, so we have three new policies to discuss, and we're gonna do them separately. So first one is C-71, which is possession administration of emergency medications. The School Board Association I'd recommend this as a replacement for the C-30, which we have in place, which is other medications. We met as a group and we decided that we wanted to keep them both, that they deal with different indications and different medications. So basically, we would want a motion to I guess to have the second reading in August, right? The next meeting is in August, so.
No, we'll have, oh, yes, the next
Right,
meeting.
no,
yes,
no
we don't-
July meeting.
We don't meet.
So unless you have any questions about this particular policy, basically it's just that, it's dealing with emergency medications and who can administer them and handling of them.
Why don't we do all three since they're all first readings as a group?
Okay, we can do that. Secondly is C-15, student conduct and discipline. This is actually a redo from something we actually had altered in it just 2 years ago. I think the main change is that there's some updated legal language, so it's nothing really dramatic on that one. So again, we've asked for a motion for a second read in August. And the third one is a new policy that we developed, very short, simple statement supporting a phone-free and device-free campus. We basically wanted to just put that out as a value that we value as a district. All the basically procedures and all that will be as part of implementation, and that would be developed by the district. The importance of this was just to make a public facing policy that people can easily find. And again, if it is passed by the legislation, it's certainly in the spirit of the legislation that's been talked about tonight. So, and that also, we would ask for a second reading in August, all three of these, so.
Any questions for the policy committee?
I had a comment. I thought it was a short and sweet policy.
Yeah.
But we did start listing very specifically what would be included, like Bluetooth headsets are not allowed and, smart watches. And so if we're gonna start listing devices, do we have to make sure we capture everything? Cause like where would this iPad fall in? And like where,
Well, I think it'll be under procedures. I think enough things are used for education and they fit under Chromebooks and iPads and things like that, that.
Smart glasses? Yeah, like,
No.
seriously.
No. Smart glasses, Bluetooth, phone, watches, personal devices.
Right.
That distract one in the hallways and at lunch and prohibit.
Right, we did put in personal, I mean, that I think is the thing that.
Personal, so as I read it, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
giving like drafting advice, right? Like, cause it says personal cell phone, smartphone, smartwatch, Bluetooth headphone. So you're starting to create a list that sounds exhaustive, but if you don't want it to be exhaustive, then you have to say something like, but not limited to. You know what I mean? So capture everything. Or you're gonna get more exhaustive and capture iPads and smart glasses and like
Whatever
smart
they think of
shoes,
next.
whatever it is next, like.
Flat screen TVs.
No.
Yeah. I don't know, I was just, that's the
But
only,
not limited to, that's the language that. that's
something
good.
like that,
Including.
including but not limited to, you know, personal devices rather than just personal cell phone. Cause if you say devices, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fine, well, this is why we're having a second reading, so
I'm taking notes.
take notes and we'll bring it back, that's fine.
Right, because we have no idea what's gonna be around even next
Yeah.
week.
But Aaron, we wrote this with Aaron and he asked us for the policy, but it was time for the board to back him up with
That's right.
this, so
And he's got quite a procedure, that's what I
Right.
saw drafted.
No, that's, I point to take.
And then it does.
yeah, so,
include all
no,
those
but
things.
the language is very important, so thank you.
Yeah. All right, so, I guess, you know, we're still, we're asking for, you know, a second read, and we will take this back to the committee for, you know, to make revisions before that, that's fine.
With more board member input. Oh, I was just gonna say, I maybe wouldn't say like personal device, just device in general, cause again, you know, two people are watching a flat screen TV and it's. I'm just like looking for all the loopholes there, and I know what I would find.
I mean, there's gonna be loopholes, there's always gonna be loopholes, there's always gonna be rebels, there's always, you know, the point.
Well,
of
we,
all this is
again, we don't want to say that
to
no electronic devices
to
can be
encourage
used for
social-
education.
Can we have one person talk?
I'm sorry.
The point, you know, there's always gonna be loopholes and kids who are gonna try to cut you these pouches and go all and rebel, and I think that the point of all this is really just to encourage social, you know, socialization. They're gonna have Chromebooks, you have emails on them, they have iPads in the art room, they exist, it's not like we're like Luddites. The point is that you're not like this, walking down the hallway and running into, you know, the other person who doesn't see you, or like not talking to each other at lunch.
Is there a motion? So would someone like to move the three policies to a second reading?
I make the motion.
One second.
All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you.
Can
What was that?
I oppose to one? They're listed as all three, so
Yeah,
can I oppose to the last one?
all right, so then we have to take each one as its own, right?
Yes.
Oh, somebody's trying to get in. All right, all those in favor of the first, on medicines, medications, please say aye.
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 Any? All right, anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? All right, C15, student conduct and discipline. Do we have some ayes?
Aye.
No,
Aye.
Do
Aye.
we have anyone opposed? And do we have anyone abstaining? All right, the cell phone policy and related technology policy.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstains? All right, all three are moved to a second reading.
no, I think,
He was saying, he agreed with them.
He disagreed with the cell phone.
Correct.
Yeah, I
Right, so-
disagreed with the cell phone.
so don't we have to do a,
Yeah, I just did, we all did all three. I'm not doing that.
So. The roll call, the same as the last one.
okay,
You didn't hear that over there. Okay. I hope the
Anyway.
agenda police aren't watching tonight.
and we'll bring it back in 2 weeks and change.
Okay, Does buildings and ground have an, update?
Katie's not here.
I
No,
can,
it's not.
I can read the minutes, you know, and I can just say. So we had just a couple of things to talk about. The one piece of good news is that we finally got, we think, the last variance that we needed to do the elevator at Wes. So now we just have to get a timeline going and that can move forward. And then the other thing that we talked about was the PCB, and our committee decided that we weren't going to make a recommendation and we were going to put it onto the board. And now the board is telling us that it's going to have to happen in our committee. So I guess we're going to have to go back and do that. I personally would like to hear a little more about this idea of community input. Is our committee supposed to figure out how that's going to happen, or is somebody else going to do that? Like, how do you see this going forward?
I'm happy to set that in motion.
I'll be at your meeting, Lara.
Okay. Wow. Okay, our meeting's actually garnering like attention and celebrity.
I might attend it as well. Unless Elliot doesn't have to, he has a quorum.
But yeah, that was basically it this past meeting.
All right, thank you. Negotiations with,
I think we've set a date for mediation, with the ESP for the CBA, which will be June 16th.
thank you. I don't think there are any other working group updates today. All right, great.
Sorry, Carrie, can I talk about the community engagement group or not this time?
Well, yeah, we just need to find a date, so, to have a meeting.
But not about the PCB, about the school, but just about the school build and asking about that one pager that Mr. Hubble sent today.
Oh, I hadn't even gotten it yet, but, yeah, go ahead and talk about it.
You know, just I touched on it a little bit before, that we're in grave danger of losing our school, and I don't think a lot of the greater community realizes this. And so I've been talking with some community members who you know, we were very vocal about the UA, and now we're up against something. It's of a huge magnitude that makes UA seem like child's play, and I'm personally very worried, and a lot of other community members are, and so. As a member of this community engagement committee that we formed a couple months ago, but we haven't met yet, so I'd like to spearhead meeting, because I think that the community is looking for information from the board about about strategy and where do we go from here? So there's been kind of a rough working draft of a one pager to kind of outline the risks that the community has if we lose the school. So I just want to vocalize this, that I'm working on this draft, and I'll share it with the board and with everybody, and you know, to make like a document that's really succinct and educational. And I know that time is of the essence, so I just wanted to bring this up.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a date, getting a date together.
Yeah, my other question was did we talk about who's going to replace Ernie?
No, not yet, but possibly Gina might be interested.
I am interested.
She has a strong public relations background.
But you've come in from Reading, so.
Yeah, but she's the Reading representative to the board, so she could certainly be.
But then are we missing a board member or not?
Right, and the select board will identify something. So there's a process that's not part of the school board.
I see.
For
Yeah.
selecting who the replacement
They
is.
have to call for interested parties and then interview them and then collaborate with us as to who they and we think is the best candidate. If there's more than one person who steps forward. So far as I know, they haven't followed, so I'm gonna call Eric Duffy tomorrow and ask him when he's gonna start that, cause he'll probably put it out through listserv and other places.
Carrie, that is actually my job as your district.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm the one that is responsible for advertising.
Okay. Okay, so you advertise it,
I do.
all right,
Yep, and I have 30 days.
right,
We're 30 days to fill the position, basically,
Right,
yeah,
right.
between organizing the select board and the school.
But it's the select board's decision at the end of the day.
no.
It's not their
Not
decision. It is a town decision. It is, they work in collaboration with each other, the school board and the select board. Yeah.
So this decision would be made in August?
It could happen in August, it could happen, if they did it by the 2 weeks from now, if they actually got people to come in and do that, we could do it then, or we could call a special meeting.
Okay. Special meeting, got it. Thank you.
Yep. It's very hard to track all that information down. I looked for it myself, but, because Eric said to me, are you sure we have to get involved? I said, oh, yes, I know you have to get involved.
Yeah, it's a collaboration. Because they are representing the town.
Okay. So we have 3 sets of minutes to approve, May 5, May 19, and May 22. Can we do those as a group?
I hope so.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes.
And I will second that.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All right, at this time, we have another opportunity for public comments, so if anyone in the public would like to make a comment, you're welcome to do that now. Anyone on the screen? Sarah?
Yes, thank you. As a resident of Reading, I'm still confused about the committee that you were just speaking about the Community Engagement Committee. Is this a committee only of school board members, or are you also including folks who are not members of the board in this process?
Yes, members of the public will be invited to be on the committee, and it's a working group, so it's not an official committee, so you would have full voice at the table to talk, and we would like to find citizens from all the towns, preferably, to add their voice to that committee. It's an opportunity for concerns and successes and ideas to bring to that group, to engage, similar to the what's happened in Barnard with their teachers and community, something like that. So it's a branch of the communications / community engagement group. They're kind of gonna work hand in hand on that.
Very good. I will reaffirm what Alicia Fujetta said earlier this evening in the first public comment session about folks in Reading have also begun to gather, as the folks in Barnard have, with the same commitment to joining in a collaborative way with the board and the administration for the sustainability of the rural schools in our region. And so we do have a number of folks who could potentially be interested in being part of this committee, and just knowing who to stay in touch with and how and when would be helpful. And with our new representative, Gina McAllister, perhaps that might be a contact point for us.
Great.
If I can just chime in before Lisa, there's a difference. So a lot of the Reading community has heard me talk about the CEWG, the Configuration and Enrollment Work Group. This is separate from the Community Engagement Group. And so there's plenty of opportunity for everybody to kind of find where their best niche is, as far as whether it's just engaging with the community around general topics, or specifically around the configuration of our campuses and where our enrollment falls.
And I know there's interest in Reading in both of those.
Yes, Gina.
I'm not sure this is absolutely relevant, but in trying to catch up as fast as I can in this new position, I'm gonna be at the PTO meeting on the 12th of June. And I hope you'll come out and introduce yourself.
I attend.
Is the 11th.
Oh, the 11th.
Yes.
At the Reading PTO? Yeah, I'm gonna guarantee you that unless my foot falls off. And I'm really interested in meeting as many people as possible. I am passionate on this issue.
Thank you. Lisa?
So my name is Lisa Linton. I'm a resident of Woodstock, and I have a grandchild that is in the middle school. And I just have two comments I'd like to make about the cell phone ban. The first one I would like to make is what is the responsibility of the school who is going to be taking possession of these devices? We provide the service, we pay for the phone. If they are lost or damaged while they are in the possession of the school, who is going to be responsible for fixing or replacing said devices? And my second comment is I work in in the emergency service position, and in many cases where there is an emergency within the school, those calls come first, usually by students before they come by staff. And so therefore there needs to be some accountability and some kind of communication as to how you're going to maintain a safe environment for these students while they are in the school.
I can answer the first question for you, Lisa. I believe they're gonna have their own pouch that's in their backpack. So it will be in the possession of the students at all times, except that they can't open the pouch. So the school's not gonna be locking them up or holding them from the students, so they will have the pouch. The second one is a point that, I think.
Can I answer that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in regards to communication with emergency responders, each classroom and workspace has now been fitted with a call button, which automatically is, once pushed, is communicated to emergency services. Not only that an emergency situation is happening, but also send screenshots of the area in which it's happening. Those have been installed. We'll be practicing over them over the summer, and that will be fully in place in the high school this fall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Lisa.
All right, I think we have an executive session to discuss a contractual matter. It will be quick. And then we will have time to reflect.
Thank you all. Thank you, Lionel.
Thank you.
Good luck your last days.
Oh, boy. You're in the executive session. We are in recording. Is there a motion to approve the MOU? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any, Lara's at an aye?
It's an I and a slowdown. Can somebody, like, can you tell me the name of the people who made the motion and seconded?
Oh, yes, Anna made it and Gina seconded.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
I'm abstain.
Okay, 3, and we have 1, 2, 3, okay. Well, the vote carries. So we're all set there. Thank you. And finally, we now have an opportunity to evaluate and implement recommendations for improvement. Anybody have a comment to make?
It's pretty amazing that we went through that agenda in 3 hours. So thank you all for your patience, allowing people to present, share their work, and being so supportive. There was a lot of presentations, recognition of the Julie Brown work. So I just want to thank you. When we put that agenda together, we knew it was a lot, but it was important to show the progress in the strategic plan goals. So thank you all.
All right, thank you all. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.